Hello, my name is Dan Corcoran, Chair of the Hfma Metro New York Technology Committee. Today, our topic is high reliability. We're here with Patrick Horine. Hey, could you tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the topic of high reliability?
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate coming before this audience because it's one that while I have connections with from past roles as an administrator in a hospital, and certainly with my own role having to manage the finances of our organization, but don't often get to talk about them from the perspective of kind of what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. My background has been one starting in quality and going into operations, actually in business development and operations, where I was working with medical staff development, bringing physicians on and whatnot. And then I was a chief operating officer of a hospital, and then ultimately led my own hospital, about a 220-bed facility. Through all of that, I have been involved in quality and accreditation aspects that have led us to developing an accreditation program and what we've created in DNV Healthcare, creating a program that's going to be unique for healthcare organizations, and how we approach the accreditation process, demonstrating compliance to meeting CMS's expectations, but also bettering the organization. And one of the things that this created this platform to talk about is something that we can deliver on for hospitals and other organizations for that matter, and how do we take them to a next level. Obviously we're, ISO 9001 is something I introduced as a part of when we started this whole thing. But as this has evolved, it's proven to be very, very effective, namely for healthcare organizations. And so I come from a background of being able to apply this, knowing of an approach that many are accustomed to from quality perspective and accreditation perspective, and then being able to apply a different way of thinking, a different approach and how they tackle this. But this, with regard to high reliability, something that I think so highly of, is because I see so many great things that hospitals are doing, and from my past experiences and what I've taken into this is that it's a great way of validating that. And so I come from a background of having that understanding from where they are and what they've done.
Let's start off with the origins of high reliability and its what was the influencing factors for you to bring your organization in that direction?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked, because one of the things in particular that really struck my interest with this was that we've got a number of hospitals that have been with us several years. And as we've introduced ISO 9001 as an integral part of our accreditation process, many of these hospitals have just gone, beyond expectation for what they've done with ISO 9001, really embracing it, really making this methodology a part of the fabric of the hospital. And what we were really hoping for was that, as we look and we make this, there's the accreditation component, certainly for meeting the expectations of CMS, meeting our requirements to demonstrating that. But for hospitals to truly get more gain from working with us, from really applying the ISO methodology, what more could we take them to that next level? And there's only so much you can do with a certification program, so to speak. But what we're looking for is that is ISO is foundational to high reliability. And we get into many organizations, and many will make the claim, say we declare ourselves a highly reliable organization. And what is it that does that for you? How do you make that statement and have the ability to demonstrate that as an organization? And it's really all over the board. It's really self-attest. But one of the things that we'd really like to do is how you really kind of go about truly demonstrating that. Is there accountability from a third-party review that we could demonstrate, and structuring a way that this is kind of where the organization has truly gone above and beyond, using ISO as the foundation, of course, but what have they done to truly demonstrate being a high reliable organization? And we set out to work with this group, and actually it was interesting, the initial conversation that we had, I wish it would have been in a forum just like this, in a podcast, and we could have hit record, because it was a fascinating conversation talking about the relationships between ISO 9001 and high reliability. And for us is that this group's SG Collaborative Solutions had really developed a program that was very sound with respect to high reliability, but with their own kind of approach to it. And they call it the collaborative high reliability model. And as we were talking more about this, reading more through it, it was definitely in line with what we're trying to advocate for our hospitals, what we're really trying to see and support in their facilities, and that we can really kind of further enhance what they're doing. And that goes beyond the kind of the traditional accreditation type of model, if you will, and from a compliance standpoint, but where are you truly demonstrating this, and where have you really taken advantage of your quality management system to lead you down this path? And many organizations are in different stages of that journey. And it's not so much a destination. It's not so much, we're once we get to that point where we declare ourselves high reliability, we stop. It's an ongoing process. And we think the ISO 9001 process fits in very, very well with that and what we've done. So we have designed a third-party accreditation, a third-party certification program that really enables hospitals to apply, and any organization for that matter, just doesn't have to be hospitals, but to apply those set of standards and as a means of demonstrating high reliability. So it really ties in well with what we're already doing in our current work with the hospitals.
I see. So how is ISO 9001 and HRO the same? And then tell me how it's different.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question you ask, because it's like, kind of what's the tie-in to that? When I think about high reliability and some of the core components of that, you're looking at one, how does just culture play into this? And this is really kind of more of the program for the collaborative high reliability from SGS, but how does the just culture apply to what we're doing? One of the things for ISO is obviously engagements of others in your processes. So the people at the front line doing this every day, how is it demonstrated when things are going well, when things aren't going well? Is it such that you do have a culture within the organization that you can identify things that have gone wrong? Hopefully those near miss situations, nothing, not just those catastrophic, but playing into that. And I think that's kind of one key aspect as it relates to it. I think the other are really the consistency in approach and how you're applying your processes. How are you striving for that continual improvement? But as we're looking for with ISO, it's not necessarily about perfection, but how do you continually get better? How do you currently, refine your processes that you're working on today? And then as you introduce other processes and things of that within that collaborative, high reliability culture, if you will, how have you engaged others? How have you used your information to apply and kind of making those processes more consistent? How are you engaging the staff and training those staff? All of that becomes an inherent part of the organization and kind of what they're able to do and applying kind of this kind of approach. And the biggest challenge that we've had with the hospitals at this point, many of the new hospitals and struggle with the fact that, how much do we really know about ISO 9001? A lot of people even are nervous about it because they know so little about it. But what they fail to understand is that most hospitals are probably 60 to 70% of the way there of already having implemented ISO, and they don't even know it. So if you're setting up this way and a quality management system kind of follows that path, then taking this to the next level is more kind of, the evolution of that quality management system and how it matures. And so when you're looking at customer service, you're looking at quality, you're looking at process, you're looking at financial responsibility, and the overall kind of integrity of the organization, all of these aspects kind of play together And ISO really serves more as the structure, an applied structure that you put within the organization and what you follow, for how we conduct internal audits, how we define our processes, policies, and procedures. How do we then apply those? And again, if they're going to be the same kind of process in different areas, are they applied the same way, or do we have some unique aspects related to them? And so we're really trying to see kind of how that takes them above and beyond. And I think that's where collaborative high reliability comes in. It's not about just the documentation. It's not just about following policies and procedures, but how is this aligned within the organization? How have you integrated this with other aspects of what you do throughout the organization? And I think that's what naturally kind of ties them together. Mm-hmm.
So why should our financial audience care about HRO?
Well, I mean, I think there are many reasons, kind of tangible and the intangible, but, I guess for us is that, it depends really on market sometimes. If you're in a market where there's a lot of other industries where ISO is more well known because that's what they're going through themselves, there's an amount of a marketability, if you will, of your ISO certification. If you're not, really, it's just really a demonstration of what you as an organization have committed to for quality. And I think from a high reliability standpoint, it builds confidence. This is building customer confidence, building patient confidence in what you're the services that you're providing. And I think if you're again, it depends on the competitive environment these organizations are in, but just like any certification program, there's some rationale behind it. With respect to, I want to be the orthopedic center of excellence and demonstrate me in comparison to my competitors that I have exceeded requirements, demonstrating that we have an effective orthopedic, surgery program. So the same way for high reliability, putting that label on the organization demonstrates to others that you've taken the steps to go through a third-party review, a rather extensive third-party review, of what you've got in place for your processes, your approach, assessing the extent of the just cultures in place. It's not just words, but it's in our actions as leadership, and this is what you'll see and coming from our staff. So I think it's building that customer confidence that attracts patients to the hospital. More patients, more revenue. Obviously, that's certainly attractive from a financial standpoint. I think the other would be receptivity of those networks that the hospitals participate in. While there are some linked to the CFO's office and others maybe separate service within the hospital, but nonetheless, they're all responsible for demonstrating how they can achieve expectations, level of requirements called upon them to participate in a respective managed care network, for example. And so from those payers and that perspective would see, here's kind of what the hospitals have done. Again, it lends itself for having another confidence builder to those parties that we're involved with from a network standpoint that, hey, this is a provider of choice that we want to recognize in our organization because they have taken these steps and promoting internally what they do, obviously, and how that's demonstrated in their patient care. The other type of thoughts in mind with that would be really what's the overall benefit of the organization and sustainability. As we've gone through probably the most challenging time. I don't know what it was like when Medicare first came in about 1969 for the hospitals, but the challenges financially for what the hospitals have had to endure throughout the pandemic, and sustainability certainly plays a role in this. How are we able to sustain our operations to serve our patients, to provide, for the means for our staff to be employed and take care of those patients. But from that standpoint, I think from a high reliable perspective is that it shows and demonstrates what an organization has done to really kind of develop systems, approaches, have the culture in place that demonstrates the means for being sustainable over time. And I don't know what some of the hospitals, I know many have been really strapped and looking for some saviors financially, and hopefully some of that comes through. But I think this would be one of demonstrating a hospital that has able to overcome a lot of what they've been burdened with. And I think having something in place like this, and hopefully ISO has been a help, as we've seen that demonstrated time and time again by the hospitals. It's not so much what we do for them, but what we have made them accountable for and demonstrating as part of accreditation. And I think in demonstrating that accountability, they've used this to their advantage, and it's hopefully strengthened their hospitals, and ultimately, from a financial standpoint, made them more sustainable to work through this.
Does this require the hospitals to have Six Sigma and other types of skills to get the certification?
No, not necessarily. It's really not aligned with, any particular one. The way, I guess, organizations, it really depends on who you are and how you kind of characterize it. But I look at Six Sigma, Lean, and others as tools that work within the ISO 9001 framework. Obviously would work within a high reliability framework. And ISO serves more as the kind of the quality system structure that you have in place. So if you're an organization that uses Six Sigma, that really kind of becomes a part of the quality management system. It's not one or the other. Are we going to go the ISO route, or are we going to go the Six Sigma route? They're not parted against each other that way. So they both work well with one another. And some organizations have made great strides with that. Others, as I've seen, there's somewhat a disconnect between your black belts and the frontline staff being able to, kind of make that Six Sigma kind of approach work. Lean probably falls more closely related this way, but it's not like, doing Six Sigma so far off the mark. It's not at all. It's actually very relatable to this process and approach. It's just that how some people take it. So some people try to think that, okay, Six Sigma is one approach we can take, or we can go ISO, and they're just not that's not the best way to describe it.
Yeah, Six Sigma is a failure in most instances. So I'm not a proponent. I probably won't bring it up during the webinar at all.
Well,
I was hoping the answer was no, not required. So
yeah, and it's like it's not like it's so much as a negative. I am a student of quality management systems, Duran, Deming. I kind of grew up that way in my career, and it's not that that's something that's going to be bad. It's just that I think it really kind of depends on, culture plays into that with an organization, how effective their quality system is to be able to have a more effective approach using Six Sigma. But it's certainly, you want to get to zero errors in anything that you do, and that kind of thinking in the way of Six Sigma is the approach to take to get there. It's one tool, but the ISO structure probably forces that accountability of the organizations of how do you test it, how do you put it in place, does it work, is it consistent with the processes, have we outlined that for our staff and whatnot.
What can we promise our financial audience that they'll learn from this webinar?
Well, I think really, we can't go without going into all the details of our program. What I really just want to open their eyes to the fact that, there is a means for demonstrating, kind of what the organization has done to be effective, and how they've continued to mature their quality management system. And, what we're trying to do is provide a means to validate that for the hospitals, that, if you are on that high reliability journey, and you've made some great strides in what you've done within the organization, how do you demonstrate that? Let's talk about just culture and kind of what you've done. How does staff feel about that? Well, leadership might say one thing, and the staff like, well, no, we don't have a just culture. I don't feel comfortable at all sharing our mistakes. Well, and then there's obviously disconnect there. And so what I would love for this audience to understand is that, there's merit and value behind whether it be accreditation, certification, looking to apply some of this methodology and approach. I know sometimes it's difficult, for organizations to sign that check for something like this, but I think the ultimate benefit is how they're perceived in the market. it plays into the marketability of the hospital. It builds confidence with the patients. And I think it truly does get back to that sustainability over time and what they're able to do. And I think with improving the systems, improving the quality management system approach and what they're doing is overall going to have a financial impact on the organization.
I can kind of get that, we shouldn't use 25 different vendors for, joint replacement. And maybe there's, opportunities to use data to see if there's a cost benefit analysis in some of those areas. But the pursuit of quality measures, a higher quality measures, so you can, get with a carrot stick approach of CMS, where they dangle out, get some money if you can achieve this, get some money if you can achieve that. I don't think data analytics should be used to pick and choose. How can I avoid that stick and get that carrot by doing pinpoint strategic instructions to my doctors? So
yeah, right. And I mean, sharing that information, I think it also the reverse is true. So when some of that financial information that we get and having that analytics also be sharing with the clinical staff. So you have an understanding. Here's what this means. If you choose to use this product over this product, here's what it's costing the hospital. I mean, not to let that necessarily guide every clinical decision, but it's important for them to be aware of it. And you're really looking at it from the demonstrated outcome. If one is less costly yet produces a solid outcome, then obviously let's pursue that path. But I think it's not unilateral approach. I can look at the financial data and look at one decision, and I can look at the clinical and make the one decision. They've got to be tied together in some way, shape, or form in many circumstances.
So if I'm a CFO of a hospital and I engage your organization in providing this, do I learn as each of these audits happen how far along the HRO journey they are?
Yeah, I mean, that's to say, we wouldn't be effective in doing what we're doing if the organization wasn't learning something. By the same token, we wouldn't be effective listeners. We wouldn't be effective learners if we're not picking up something from these hospitals that we can apply elsewhere. And so it's really kind of that two-way street. But I think, from that standpoint, what are we going to gain from this? How do I go about doing it? Because I might be really far along the way and I might have some excellent processes in place and demonstrate this, but I might not have that just culture. I've got a lot of the key elements in place, but we just haven't gotten there yet. I've got a great structure in place for our processes and policies and procedures. It's sound. We've got a good review process. We've got a good approval process. We test this, but we haven't gone out to see, are we effective in really following through on those policies? Are we doing it consistently in the organization? So it really kind of depends on where they're at. It's all about level of maturity. And again, it's a journey, not necessarily about the destination, but that's the thing, is that how you're progressing along gets you there. And the validation process is really going to tell you, where you fall short and where you've excelled. And that's really the intent behind the process. Because this is not necessarily for, that Medicare ticket to participation, if you will. This is about demonstrating effectiveness of us as an organization. So there's a different driver behind it.
Do you give a score for level of maturity?
We have introduced some of that. This kind of where we've gotten for some of the initial certifications of basically the teams and how we set this up. But as we get into the full organization certification for high reliability, there may be some levels of that to really assess to the extent of where they're at in one particular area or another. That's something we're going to work through. I'm not so much an advocate for score, so to speak, on, we achieved the 85% on the test, so to speak, because what happens is we'll start focusing on the remaining 15% we work on, and then we'll forget about the 85% we've been doing well. And what happens is that will start to fall, and we maintain our focus there. So there's pros and cons of the scoring kind of methodology, but I can see where there's obviously interest in it. So you know where you stand, but hopefully by what we provide back in the report and feedback to the hospitals, that gives them an idea to know from a strengths and weaknesses what they need to focus their attention on.
If a hospital's been self-attesting that they've are successful with HRO, it's possible they go through your program and they fail, I imagine.
Yeah, well, I say fail. Let's say just maybe fall short of that expectation. And if anything, it's going to open their eyes to where some of those weaknesses are. And I think that's important for leadership to understand. You know, I can profess and claim that, you know, we are all things great. I mean, I'm requiring this of ISO, and I can mirror that exactly for our hospitals. They want to see the best practice. They can just look at us. We are not that, you know, organization. We have so much work to do on our own to do that way. And we know where some of our weaknesses are. And we can see that too from the feedback from hospitals that we get at our process. We are continually improving. And I think the same goes for the organizations we're working with. You need to be constantly learning from this process. One step is going to take you in the other into something else. But again, about that, you know, journey, looking at that maturity over time. You know, once we get to that point where, you know, yes, you can make this declaration and be sound in proclaiming that, because we have gone through all these respective steps to demonstrate that, to know that I've got the confidence in saying that. Right now, I can say I think it. You know, we do a lot of things great, but you know, when you truly validate that, that's when you know.
What would you like our audience to know about the hospitals that are succeeding on their HRO journeys from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting this process right now. We're going to be piloting it in some hospitals, but I guess for this audience is to be engaged in a way that's beyond numbers, but what's behind the numbers. You know, I have to look at financials all the time. Monthly, I'm going through them. Weekly, sometimes I see kind of where we are with that, and I'm accountable for that, just as they are. But I want to be engaged at a level to understand what, you know, what's been happening with the surveys. I would want the financial people to be understanding of how effective are we in what we're trying to deliver on? How effective are we in the quality system that we've tried to put in place, that it's getting the results that we want to glean back? I can be the CFO, and I can support investment in so many different things. It's very easy for me to know what's the return going to be on an MRI or some diagnostic equipment. It's a little bit more difficult for me to grasp what's coming from a new service or something we put in place of a new process. But if they get engaged in that, they will understand what's behind it. So it's going to be better, and for us, from the compliance side, from the quality side, to enlist their engagement in this process, to learn more about it. You know, ask questions, be intellectually curious in what we're doing from a quality standpoint, because it's ultimately going to impact you in a very positive way. They will see that.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.